Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Come on, I know you're eating. As the former board chair of NSC, I have the honor of presenting this year's Founders Circle Award. The award was established by the National Skills Coalition and Board of Directors in 2023 in honor of our founding CEO, Andy Van Clunen. Over his 23 years leading NSC, Andy partnered with public, private, and philanthropic leaders to grow the organization's influence and impact. His efforts were rooted in the belief that a greater diversity of workers will have access to a better life, and a greater diversity of businesses will see growth if inclusive, high-quality skills training is a central part of our nation's education, economic growth, and anti-poverty policies. Andy was named the first recipient of the Founders Circle Award upon his retirement from NSC in celebration of his multi-decade commitment to building an organization and a national movement. Now this award is given annually to recognize leaders in the public, private, and philanthropic sectors who have leveraged their influence to further NSC's mission and impact. I am very pleased to announce that the recipient of this year's Founder Circle Award is Portia Wu. I've had the pleasure of getting to know Portia as a colleague while serving on the NSC board together. During that time, I witnessed her dedication to advancing policies that create equitable opportunities and outcomes for workers and families. Her command of policy and strategy was always on full display. Currently serving as the Secretary of Maryland's Department of Labor, Portia plays a pivotal role in strengthening the state's workforce and economic opportunities. And while this isn't a very impressive position, it's really the wealth of experience that Portia has developed throughout her career that has made her so impactful. She has worked tirelessly and deftly across public, nonprofit, and private sectors to advance policies on job training, wage standards, work-family balance, immigration, and worker safety. She is committed to shaping and implementing policies that put workers and families front and center. It is her ability to bring stakeholders together to implement policies that is so rare. Her credibility and her grace draw people in. Portia leads collaboratively, but with purpose, accomplishing as much as she can in often very little time in each of the roles that she has held. Her distinguished career also includes service at the highest levels of government. Many of us knew her as the Assistant Secretary of Labor for Employment and Training at the U.S. Department of Labor, where she oversaw billions of dollars in workforce and training investments. She led the implementation of WIOA, something most of us would not have enjoyed, and managed income supports and reemployment programs. Portia also served as Special Assistant to the President for Labor and Workforce Policy at the Obama White House. And she was General Counsel and Labor Policy Director for the Senate Help Committee under Senator Edward M. Kennedy. Those are only some of the remarkable roles that Portia has served in, and the impact she has had speaks for itself. We are all better for Portia's engagement in workforce development. It is my honor to present Portia with this year's Founders Circle Award in recognition of her incredible legacy. Join me in welcoming Portia to the stage.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Alice, for that warm introduction. I'm touched and deeply honored to be here today to accept the Founders Circle Award. I want to thank Brooke and the leadership of the National Skills Coalition for their work and tireless dedication, and of course, to extend my deepest gratitude to Alice and the entire board. I had the honor of serving on the National Skills Board for a few years, and I have to say, most of the time we don't get up in the morning and say, oh gosh, I am so looking forward to that 6-hour-long meeting on my calendar today. But for the Skills Board, I really did, because NSC's board really was an embodiment of the whole National Skills Coalition approach. And that is one that's also recognized in the work of the outstanding staff, which is that leaders from every aspect of the skills universe come together to engage thoughtfully, passionately, without ego, and with the deepest commitment to service. So to the board members and the outstanding staff, I say thank you, and I'm really humbled to be selected by you for this award. There's really no other organization like the NSC, an organization that's focused wholeheartedly on unlocking the tremendous potential of America's workers, empowering individuals to pursue their dreams, and serving our nation's businesses and employers. And it does so through bringing people together, through thoughtful dialogue and policy development, through building mutual understanding and respect, and through including diverse viewpoints and experiences. These are difficult times. Here in DC and where I sit just across the border in Maryland, I can say we feel very keenly the winds of change and frankly are very concerned about what may be ahead. But I have to say, these trials are what really test our mettle and our commitment to forge ahead. They inspire us to strengthen our bonds of common cause and to unite in our shared goal to support working families and help businesses to find the talent they need to grow. And most importantly, to continue to work together and share and learn from one another. We know that our work is more vital than ever now to uplifting people and communities, and in these uncertain times, that work must continue. So that brings me to my final thank you of today, which is I really want to thank everyone in this room for what you're doing and for being here. You are the people who are meeting the headwinds straight on. You're clear-eyed about the challenges ahead and what we're going to need to confront them, and you're unwavering in your commitment to serve our country's workers and businesses. It's your dedication to inclusive partnership that will make our communities more resilient, and in the end, your spirit of resilience is what's going to carry us through. I'm inspired by the work that each and every one of you is doing every day, and I hope to continue to follow your example in the years ahead. Thank you so much, and I see.
Our workforce programs are essential for training workers in Montana's rural communities. Given that 2 out of 3 Montanans live more than an hour's drive from an institute of higher education, geography alone in a large rural state can be a barrier to accessing workforce training. Our workforce programs focus on solutions that are mobile and accessible to every community in Montana, opening up more opportunities for good jobs. One misconception about skills training is that workers may need to be highly specialized in one area. We believe skills trainings are essential to successfully managing and retaining workers at small businesses. 67% of Montanans are employed at small businesses and are often called upon to be somewhat of a Swiss Army knife of skills. We focus on skills trainings for small businesses so they can be nimble and better equipped to address new opportunities and changing markets. My advice for workforce advocates is please remember small businesses and the importance of training resources and policies that make skills training affordable and accessible to them. In rural states like Montana, small businesses employ 2/3 of our workers. Nationwide, that number is still high at 47%. So training policies and programs that consider small businesses are important everywhere.
I'm excited to be joined by Sheila Ireland, President and CEO of OIC Philadelphia, to kick off our conversation on AI and the workforce. To level set a bit, this is not a new topic. I'm sure you've all been thinking about it, hearing about it, talking about it for the last year. We actually talked about it on this stage at last year's Skills Summit. But as quickly as technology advances, so does our understanding of its impact. And so last year, we talked about the potential impacts of AI and how researchers agreed that it would eliminate some jobs, augment others, and also create new jobs. And while we are still very much observing this impact, we've learned since then more about the decisions that businesses, policymakers, training providers, and civil society can make to ensure that workers not only participate in an AI economy, but actually thrive. And in this video that you just saw right now, we talked about the importance of preparing workers for changing labor markets. AI is a part of that change. So NSC sees the current opportunity that we're at as a jump ball moment. And so, in basketball, you throw the ball up. It can go one of two ways, and it kind of sets the tone for the rest of the game. So we see the opportunity to either use AI to foster economic opportunity for those without a bachelor's degree and to really grow the middle class, or we see a chance for it to widen existing inequalities. Just to say it out loud, we want the former. And so to help us all better understand this moment and this opportunity, today's discussion is going to focus first on how AI is showing up in communities on the ground, and how training providers, again, like Sheila, are responding to these changes to really empower workers. And then we're going to dive deeper into what the research over the last year has taught us and what the policy implications of those findings are. And so to begin at the local level, so excited, Sheila, to have you. And for those who don't know, OIC Philadelphia is a legendary local training provider founded by Dr. Leon Sullivan in 1964. And under Sheila's leadership, OIC continues to carry on a rich tradition of meaningful advocacy, job training, and individual supports to both advance workforce development as well as economic justice for local residents. And so Sheila, as a long-standing community organization in Philadelphia, OIC has supported generations of workers, generations of families. How has the introduction of AI and digital tools impacted the individuals that you are serving, and how has OIC responded?
So as you might imagine, the work that we're doing, of course, founded in the civil rights movement, has, I guess, uniquely prepared us to make transitions like we see right now in this moment. And I would say the thing that keeps me up at night, very specifically, is the broadening of the digital divide, the lack of access in the communities that we serve. In Philadelphia, we just did a study that talked about digital literacy that found that 67% of Philadelphians in the workforce could not be described as digitally literate functionally. And so as we move to a digital labor market, as we broaden that digital divide, my concern is that we will create a permanent underclass. If you're looking at routine non-cognitive work, you've got to understand that's disappearing at this particular moment in time. And I think the thing that we are really grappling with specifically is this idea that most of what you see in workforce development is focused on those types of jobs. And so are we creating a revolving door, or are we actually lifting up the communities that we serve? So at OIC Philadelphia, we are invested in a couple of different ways. One, it's not just around traversing the digital divide with things like, we have a partnership with Prescalis for IT training. We are a fully digital organization in our 100,000 square feet on North Broad. We have a laptop loaner program for the community so people who do not have access to equipment can do so. There's digital learning imbibed in that loaner program that allows people to start to traverse the divide of digital literacy. Most of our classrooms are wired to the 21st century, so we have the opportunity to introduce people in different ways. And then more importantly for us, we've come to understand that the folks that we serve in some ways live in a different microcosm than we do. We tend to call that middle class amnesia, where we think that everyone is experiencing things the same way and they are not. And so in that particular context, we strive to understand and let them understand how it can really enhance their life and the way they do business and with the labor market in particular.
Yeah. Well, one, I really appreciate you talking about the jobs that we are seeing changing or being eliminated. And I think it's important to note that sometimes when we think of AI in the workforce, we're thinking of these like Silicon Valley tech jobs. That's not the case. Like AI is not at the doorstep. It is already here. It's in jobs in retail and healthcare and agriculture. And so this is why it's so important, to your point, to equip folks with foundational digital skills as well as those industry-specific skills, because it's not just equipping them to apply those skills at work, it's equipping them to apply those skills in life, right?
That's right.
And context matters when we talk about skill building, and when we talk about a lack of exposure or access to digital tools, especially for those in poverty. It's important to remember that oftentimes that's a result of a decision made for that community by others. And so, it's unlikely if you go into a neighborhood with poverty to see a high-tech coding boot camp or a digitally driven grocery store. I don't need to name the name, I'm sure you can guess. And so we talk about food deserts, right? But there's also digital deserts. And so it's really up to us as advocates, as practitioners, as those on the ground to bring awareness to that and to change those things. So historically, and you talked a little bit about the workforce system, and I know that you've worked at different levels of it, so if you want to talk on that, you can. But historically, as significant changes come to impact workers, the workforce system is looked at as the lever to change that and to solve those problems. And so what do you think is required of the different stakeholders within the workforce system to actually equip workers for this changing economy?
So I guess the first thing I would say is we need to clean up our own house first. So I ran Pennsylvania's workforce system as the Deputy Secretary of Labor and Industry. And one of the things we had the opportunity to do was assess the digital skills of my 700 career advisors across the state. And the answer was abysmal in some way. We weren't using technology to be faster, quicker, cheaper, to provide better service. So it's very interesting to enter into communities that have that same exact gap in it without understanding how we can traverse it and invest in our own house first. I think, secondly, there is this notion that you and I discussed, and I don't know if you wanted to go there or not, when we start talking about what does workforce look like in the public arena and what do we connect people to. In Pennsylvania, it's the jobs you might expect. It's customer service, it's entry level, it's routine, it's non-cognitive. And what we are creating, unfortunately, is a revolving door. Because as those jobs disappear or require advanced digital skills, the folks that I serve in the training that we funded did not supply those skills to people. So I think in some ways, as we advance and the labor market becomes more and more digital, the divide will get greater. You've got to have digital literacy to access family-sustaining wages and career ladder opportunities. At this point, there is no other way to get there. So if people do not have the skill sets and they're not learning them in the school system, we as workforce have almost an obligation to ensure that they have at least the foundational skills to be able to do that.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing your own experiences in the workforce system. And I know at NSC, many of the workforce boards that we work with are trying to put people into high-wage, meaningful career pathways, but it takes resources, right? Especially at a time like now, those resources are harder to get, but very important. And so you all received a federal agenda when you first came to our conference at the registration desk. And that includes some of the things that NSC believes in that are going to get us further in this. So one of the things that we call on Congress to do is to include, for example, in WIOA reauthorization, funds that support integrated holistic supports, improve career navigation, partnerships at the local level with people who actually serve these communities, who understand what those needs are. Just to make another plug for something that you might think about while you're on the Hill tomorrow, NSC's also been working with Senator Kane's office on the Bipartisan Digital Skills for Today's Workforce Act, and that's about equipping current and future workers with the essential digital skills that they need to address that double digital divide. Okay, so we are close to time, but I'm going to ask you this question and see if you can answer it quickly. What advice do you have for those in the room that are going to go on the Hill tomorrow or going to go back to their states and want to talk to their policymakers about being able to support workers?
So I would suggest a couple things, right? The first thing is your job, unfortunately, in these times, is to educate your legislators around what we elected them for. I think this is a moment in time where we need to be clear that we are not going to advance as a country with the policies that we see coming out of Washington right now. We have got to, in some ways, speak truth to power and to encourage our legislators to be able to stand up and do the job that we elected them for, and to fight for us and the things that we know are right. That would be the first thing. I would suggest the second thing is there needs to be a clear understanding around all the components of workforce development, right? Sometimes workforce is so focused on can they that we forget will they. And there is a difference, I think, a subtlety and a way of doing business that really has to speak to people's vision for themselves and how they're going to move forward. I think your legislators understand that because we as human beings understand that in our own career journeys. Let us not forget that the people that we serve have those same aspirations. Their temperaments, their personalities, their desires, their vision for themselves and their families are paramount to the work that we do. And then thirdly, I think we have to, without, for lack, you said it very nicely, right? We have to talk about money. And we have to talk about return on investment for all the entities that we serve, not just the people that we serve, but the employers that we work with, the funders who fund us, the stakeholders who are invested in us across the board. I don't think we all have the leisure anymore of telling, one story about helping people. Mm-hmm. We've got to talk about how essential it is to the economic health of this country that we do what is needed. Those are the three things I would say.
Amazing. Love all three.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Sheila. And it's very clear from this conversation there's a lot more work to be done. I'm sure we will continue to be talking about AI for the years to come in the workforce. And so, again, we started at the local level, but now we want to move towards research and what those policy implications are and what that's going to look like in your conversations on the Hill tomorrow, but also when you go back to your states. And so, again, thank you so much, Sheila. And I'd now like to introduce our next panelists, Brooke, DeRenzis, Brent, Orrell, and Molly Kinder. Thank you.
I'm back. Hello. I'm going to switch it up. I'll sit over here today. How's that? See this side of the room. Thank you, Sheila, and thank you, Yasmin. I felt like it was really important to hear that conversation as we move into this conversation. Hear about all of the research and work that you have been doing on AI. And so I'm lucky to be joined by Molly Kinder of the Brookings Institution and Brent Orrell of AEI, American Enterprise Institute. And, we heard a lot from Yasmin and Sheila's conversation about the impact AI is going to have on the future of work, right? I think what Yasmin said is right. There's a lot of discussion about exactly how much we're going to see, jobs being adapted versus jobs going away and being eliminated. Molly, your research shows that 30% of workers are going to see at least 50% of their occupations disrupted, right? But there's a lot of gray space around exactly what that's going to look like. And so I want to hear from each of you, how do you view this current moment in regard to how AI is going to impact the workforce and the potential direction it could take? Molly, let's start with you.
Sure. First, it's such an honor to be here. Can you hear me okay? I have a little Madonna microphone that I'm not used to here. The reason why, at the Brookings Institution, I lead a multi-year project examining how generative AI technologies like ChatGPT, how they're impacting work and workers, and what do we do about it? That's the most important part. And I do this work because my personal view is that this technology is the most consequential of our lifetime. I think when I look out, I've got 3 kids, my eldest just turned 10. When I think about their futures, I know it's going to radically reshape the workforce that they're going to be entering into in so many aspects of their lives. I care deeply about equity and making sure that workers have real opportunity and that we don't replicate the sort of inequality exacerbating technological trends we've seen over the last few decades. My strapline on generative AI is it fills me with wonder and with worry at the same time. And I think as policymakers, employers, civil society organizations, it's our job to make sure workers can embrace the wonders of this technology, which I'll talk about, and that importantly, we address the real worries people have which could be anything from, is this technology going to get so good it's going to be better at me at my job? Is it going to make my skills obsolete? How do I even think about advising the next generation what to study or how to prepare for this workforce? And again, is this going to see something where the most privileged pull ahead and everyone's left behind? Those are some of the worries. I think when we think about AI, a lot of people's mind go to sort of displacement. There's other concerns about the way AI is adopted in the workforce. That are other types of job quality harms. De-skilling is something that worries me. Bias, discrimination, surveillance. But I also think AI is full of wonder. I recently, just last week, wrote an essay for Brookings, which is a little quirky, a little different. It's about Pope Francis and how Pope Francis, sort of counterintuitively, is one of the most visionary leaders on AI in the whole world. I had the privilege of going to the Vatican in March and leading a session on AI and workers. And I wrote an essay to try to take what Pope Francis has said in these very visionary statements and what would it look like if our future of work with AI had those principles. And just to build on Sheila's comments, one of the things that Pope Francis has said multiple times is the way we should evaluate these technologies is not the way they're currently being evaluated. In our sort of geopolitics and our sort of market competition and breaking the latest sort of SAT score, essentially, but whether or not they provide real opportunity for the least among us, for the workers who are often left out of economic opportunity. And I think where we're just naturally going, I don't see that happening unless this room and policymakers with intention change that. If you look at the stats on who's using ChatGPT the most, it's very bifurcated. It's college-educated workers, it's knowledge workers, it's coders, it's folks with a bachelor's degree. Folks who are sort of at the bottom end of the spectrum in terms of wages and education, say in fast food or the service sector, they're using it the least. That's in part because the data we have at Brookings from OpenAI, we've been able to look at every task, every job across the economy, and what the exposure is of those tasks to ChatGPT, which means could you save at least half the time on that task if you use this technology? And it turns out that what Sheila was talking about, the kind of dead-end jobs that are just sort of this circular for folks with a high school degree, they don't have the kind of cognitive tasks in their job that lend themselves to productivity and performance gains because of ChatGPT. So you compare a home health aide to a nurse practitioner, which I just did at a conference last week, and a home health aide has almost no exposure to ChatGPT because a lot of the tasks, which look similar to a line cook or a lot of these jobs, they're very manual, they're not cognitive intensive. A nurse practitioner is something like a 65 or 70% exposure because it's mostly cognitive tasks. My charge, what I would love this room to work on, is something I teased a little bit in this recent essay, but I want to do more thinking and writing on maybe with some of these folks, is what would it look like if we changed this? What if we harnessed generative AI, and I'm going to take the strapline of the CEO of Anthropic, which is one of the leading AI companies. He likes to talk about how AI is going to enable a country of geniuses in a data center. He's talking about that from a national security perspective. I think the opportunity for all of us is what does it look like for us to have a country of workers with a genius and a coach in their pocket? What if we can enable somebody who doesn't normally have lots of cognitive roles in the task? Take the home health aide, and I'm looking at Lauren King, who's been my wonderful partner on thinking about home care work and how can we improve that. Right now, this is very manual jobs. It's dressing, it's cooking. Well, what about this incredible genius in your pocket that could enable a home health aide to be guided to help the older person they take care of do their physical therapy exercises, or better understand the medicines they're taking, or be able to diagnose some illnesses or some symptoms. There's all sorts of ways we can reimagine a line cook only doing shopping is not going to be able to use ChatGPT to move to the middle class. But if ChatGPT or these technologies can be harnessed to help them do inventory management or much more sophisticated tasks, now we can rethink what that job is and what those possibilities are. It's not going to happen on its own. I think this is such an important opportunity for these folks in the room. Last, I would say, the data that we have at Brookings, which is replicated by every sort of major study, is This is we call this in our Brookings report, this is not your grandparents' automation. Generative AI touches a very different set of jobs than previous ways of technology. If we'd had this conference a few years ago, before ChatGPT was launched, I would have sounded very confident that we knew how to stay ahead of technology. Become a knowledge worker, get a bachelor's degree, lean into the human skills like creativity and compassion and empathy and persuasion, and go get some coding skills. That was pretty much the strapline. I can point to some study, a rigorous study that comes out every day that knocks down one of those assumptions. It's actually knowledge workers who face the greatest potential for disruption, for good or for bad. There's so much evidence that AI, I'm actually writing a piece for Bloomberg right now about how we're focusing on the cognitive intelligence of AI, but we're underestimating how good it is at mimicking our social and emotional intelligence in ways that are really going to appear in jobs. I just read a study the other day about how incredibly persuasive AI is. And finally, I know a lot of folks over the past 2 decades have looked at entry-level tech jobs as the path to the middle class, as the sort of thing we want to be steering people toward. That is high risk. I mean, if there's any job that's being automated right now, it's entry-level coding. And so I think we really have to be thinking, this has disrupted a lot of what we've thought of as uniquely human, as the way to stay ahead of technology. And I think that becomes a real challenge for this room. How do we prepare people? What are durable human skills? And how do we make sure that this incredible genius and coach in your pocket is not what it is today, being harnessed like people like me constantly to do my job better, but it's something that everyone across the economy can really harness.
Yeah. You said durable skills, so I want to come to you, Brent, in a minute. But I just want to lift up 2 things, that resonated with me, Molly, around what you said. I think a lot of the conversation around AI is around how AI is going to disrupt and impact knowledge workers. But you also mentioned jobs like line cooks, jobs like home health aides, and we saw during the pandemic, right? If we didn't need if we didn't have the evidence before, we certainly had it during the pandemic that these are essential jobs. They're skilled jobs that deserve dignity and respect in the same way that knowledge workers' jobs deserve dignity and respect. And so something that I appreciate that you said is, how do we think about AI to create both better floors and ladders for those essential jobs? And so durable skills is part of that. And Brent, I feel, take it away. How are you thinking about AI?
I was listening to Molly and I was thinking, I basically agree with everything she said, and I don't have a whole lot to add to
Gosh, sorry.
I guess on the
Can we just note that AEI and Brookings are agreeing on this entire agenda, so we can go forth and change policy now.
I do think I'm a little more on the wonder side than the worry side as it relates to AI. And I think it's important that we recognize that AI is not another digital technology. That's not what AI is. It is an external brain, right, potentially available to everybody. And with that external brain, we can do a lot of things that can help close that digital divide. There's been a number of studies on this already about the way that AI can act as a coach, as a mentor, as to supplement skills that frankly are the biggest problem that we have in the American workforce, which is what we talk about in terms of non-cognitive or soft skills or durable skills. There's like 19 different words. It's like asking somebody from Oregon, is it raining outside? You get all sorts of different words to describe the rain. I'm from Oregon. So I think that AI could be really helpful on the non-cognitive or soft skills front. I think that it's really important. This is a paper that I'm currently working on, but looking at key sectors of the American economy where a lot of jobs are. Things like finance and insurance, business services, government, health care, and so on, is that what you see, the through line to all of this is that those routine tasks are going away in all of these categories. Anything that can be codified into a set of rules is going to go away, and it's going to be replaced, at least that task, not the person, but the task is going to be handled by an automated process. And what's coming into its place are non-cognitive or soft skills. That's going to be the skill set that distinguishes people who are able to make the leap from the analog economy that we're in to the AI economy that's coming at us and rather quickly. So that means a bunch of different things, I think. First of all, it means that AI literacy is going to be right up there with reading, writing, and math. Yep. It's going to be essential, not optional. Everybody has to learn it. The other thing I would say is don't wait for somebody else to teach it to you, or to encourage the people that you're working with to pick up the tool and use it. I was just at breakfast this morning with Tony Pippa, another Brookings person. We're working on a project together, and he was like, yeah, I've been trying to figure out how to get AI to do, and I can't even remember what it was. And I said, well, my advice to anybody who comes to me with, well, what can AI do about this, is ask the AI.
Yes, true.
It will give you detailed instructions about how to do the thing that you want to do. And so that's the kind of power that's in the technology. It is both a tool and not a tool at the same time. It is more a mind than it is a tool. It's a repository of information and skill that everyone can access. But don't wait for somebody to teach you. Pick it up and do it now. The second thing I would say is AI literacy in schools. There's been some very interesting experiments. Carnegie Mellon University has a great program with the Montour School District where they've fully integrated AI curriculum into subject matter areas, right? It's not like going to computer science class. It's how does this work in history? How does it work in math? How does it work in language arts? How does it, all of these different areas, because that's the way the technology is affecting us. It's not, it will not remain siloed, and so we have to get out of the habit of thinking about it in its own silo. So that's those kinds of projects that can show us how to integrate this technology are extremely important. Employers are also stepping up, especially the big ones that have the resources to do it, to provide online self-guided training how to use AI. If you're in one of those organizations, make sure you take advantage of that. It's not just another slide deck that you have to deal with. And then we've got this question of what do we do about incumbent workers, which is the really hard part of this. Incumbent workers are going to need, some of them are going to be able to make this leap, and some of them are not. Talent is not evenly distributed. It's distributed along a curve. Some of the people on the curve using AI are going to be able to move up. Others are not going to be able to do it, and so we have to figure out what kinds of mechanisms do we need to support workers who face displacement. We do not have a policy for displacement. We used to have one. It was called the Trade Adjustment Assistance Program. That lapsed, and in fact, it's difficult to apply to automation, and it needs to be reshaped as kind of an automation adjustment assistance program that would give people resources to reskill, and that would deliver them, if they have to take a lower paying job, we've got wage insurance in place, all the things that we did not do with the manufacturing workforce. And so that's my rubric for sort of how do we think about adapting to this new environment in workforce policy.
Yeah, thanks, Brent. I mean, so much of what you said I want to pick up on. First, I love what you said about integrating AI into other subject matters. Those of us who've been in the adult education space know about integrated education and training, right? And it picks up on exactly what you said. Basic foundational skills being integrated into occupation-specific training. That's something that we at National Skills Coalition have advocated for a long time. We continue to do it with those foundational digital skills, and AI needs to be thought of as a foundational digital skill. So that is something that we can be talking about as we talk with policymakers on the Hill. I also really appreciate you lifting up that where there is displacement, we need to be thinking differently about our social safety net and about reskilling, right? And I do think that's a huge area where there is not a lot of policy and where people of different backgrounds, different political backgrounds can come together and start to think about how we move that forward. And so I know we only have like 3 minutes left. I want to leave you all with one question because I like that you're both leaning into the wonder of the AI and how it can empower workers. I'm also going back to what Sheila shared, right? And this is very real for many of us who are working in communities throughout the country. 92% of jobs in this country require at least one digital skill. But based on our research at National Skills Coalition, we know that 1/3 of workers have not had the access or ability to get those foundational digital skills, right? And not because people don't want to, but because people are busy working, they're raising their families, they're trying to make ends meet while they're also trying to upgrade their skills. And so if you had to say one thing, like what do you think policymakers should be doing to invest in workers being able to work alongside AI in a way that is going to support their dreams and careers, particularly so, to Sheila's point, we're not doubling the digital divide. Big question, 1 minute each, go for it.
So I would say, American Enterprise Institute, so I would say one of the things we need to do is to rebalance the tax treatment of money spent on human capital development versus non-human capital, all right? So right now, you get a lot of deductibility, a lot of credits for investment in plant and equipment. You don't get much for investing in your workers. And so I think that is a way that if we could just bring those into balance, I think it would have positive effects for workers in terms of their opportunities to learn. And it would also, I don't want to say discourage, but I think it would mitigate against unnecessary automation, right? It would help us move more toward augmentation with that kind of a tax incentive strategy.
And you heard it from Brent, investing in people, supporting businesses to invest in their people, right? And I know, Katie, this is probably teeing up our afternoon session around public investments, including helping businesses invest in their people this afternoon. How about you?
I guess the word that's coming to my mind is sort of worker-centered design. I think, because of my job so focused in AI, I consume constantly AI podcasts, and my LinkedIn feed is just full of these hungry knowledge workers sucking up every possible way that they're going to sort of adapt AI to their specific occupation. This is a bottom-up technology. The best way to know how to use it is to design it for whatever it is you want. If you want to be a good parent, you apply it to that. You want to do DIY, which I'm terrible at, it helps me DIY. You really need the worker at the center of this. I want to see more tables where workers come together with really smart technologists who can explain the technology and work with them. This is not coding. I just want to emphasize this entirely. This is kind of like having an iPhone with apps. You don't actually have to know how the iPhone was designed or any of the technology on the back end. This is meant to be user-friendly. This is not about preparing. I mean, if you read the 2015 White House AI and Automation Report, this was pre-generative AI. The message was kids in school need to learn coding skills. They need to understand how to build the technology. My message is make sure everyone can use this technology. It's a very different approach. And I think it is going to take a little bit of reshaping, but we got to put workers at the center of this. The workers have to be at the center of how this is deployed in their workplaces, how they're going to grip it, how they're going to learn it. And I'd love to see more experimentation and more organizations bringing workers to the table.
And just to wrap it up, Molly, you've written about how that kind of worker-centered design actually also benefits businesses,
Employers.
right? Because you're getting better solutions
Yeah.
when the people who are on the ground are working with their employers to
Yes.
come up with those solutions. So this is good investing in people, putting people at the center of this is good for businesses, it's good for workers, it's good for our economy. Let's thank Brent, Molly, Sheila, and Yasmin. We're going to take a break, and then we'll have concurrent sessions, and then we'll see you back here to wrap the day. Thank you, everyone.